I understand there may be some questions on the ordinance that we will be introducing this week regarding marijuana. What we are doing is we are taking an offense which used to result in a misdemeanor, and we are basically reclassifying that to a summary citation. And the reason that we're doing this is at least it's there are multiple reasons for it, but one of the more important ones is that we do believe that individuals, when they make a mistake, especially our youth, don't deserve to have that criminal record follow them for the rest of their lives. There's been a lot of talk about the importance of an expungement bill that is designed to remove misdemeanor charges over time. Well, we would argue there's no need to put them on the record to begin with. We have a 3 strikes you're out policy, which is we're going to give everybody 2 chances to receive the summary citation before it goes back to being a misdemeanor. And we also feel that that's a reasonable compromise, and there are provisions in the bill which call for contact with the parents and the family, and of course making sure that we have an adequate support system, I think is, and good communication between law enforcement and the public is a really important part. I also want to emphasize that this is going to be a major time saver for the Harrisburg Police Department. It's going to allow us to have more officers on the street because they will be able to spend less time in the DJ's office basically dealing with these misdemeanor cases. So it's a win on all counts, and it's an opportunity, I think, for Harrisburg to lead. I want to make it clear that this is not an ordinance change which should be interpreted as being pro-marijuana. We are not pro-marijuana, and we don't want to send the wrong message to our youth. What we are trying to do is say that we understand that people make mistakes. We don't want to unduly clog the criminal justice system. We want more officers on the street, and we want to give people and their families an opportunity to change without having a permanent record for a misdemeanor. So, yeah. There is going to be a fine which will start at $100 for the first offense, double to $200 for the second offense, and then after that it's back to a misdemeanor. And right now, generally the district justices affix a fine in addition to that misdemeanor charge, which is higher. So in many ways this is also a reduction of the fine, and it's an opportunity to try and, I hope, address the root causes of the offense in a way which doesn't unduly penalize it or criminalize it for the long term.
What's the quantity?
So this is 30 grams, is that right? It's considered I'm not an expert on the small quantity of marijuana definition, but that is correct, isn't it?
I believe
yes. And it is basically applies not to those that are possessing a larger quantity or dealing in drugs or marijuana. This is simply a possession of a small amount. The law, the Pennsylvania law, already provides a distinction between amounts greater than that and amounts lesser than that. And we are simply reclassifying the criminal penalty to be more like a parking ticket or another form of summary citation than actually a misdemeanor. That seems to make sense and have a great deal of societal benefit.
Is this based on what Philadelphia did just last year?
It's a little different than Philadelphia. They have some, and we've given this a lot of thought. They don't have the 3 strikes and you're out aspect to it. There is a little bit more of a policy statement in their bill that talks about the importance of decriminalizing marijuana, which is not what we're doing here. But it is modeled on that ordinance and the ordinance that was also adopted in Pittsburgh.
It's been very successful in reducing the amount of arrests and the amount of jail sentences as well.
Yes, and we did look at that. In terms of the number of misdemeanor offenses in Harrisburg over the past 2 years, it's been over 600 a year, rather routinely and predictably. And that's something, you can imagine the degree to which that helps sort of clog the court system.
Have you spoke to DA Marsico about this?
We have, and I think the DA is looking into it. I would say that it's going to take communities like Harrisburg sort of leading the way. I think he has some concerns about the desire for there to be sort of equal penalties throughout all of the county, and we would agree with that, but hopefully other municipalities would follow Harrisburg's model because we think this is the right model.
But you can go ahead no matter what, even if he says no.
Right, we are going ahead. City Council will have to vote on this, and it'll be introduced this week, and there'll be a public hearing, and there'll be a time for a conversation and discussion about it. But we think it's smart policy. One of the things that I've tried to do is we talked a little bit today already about how we have limited numbers of officers, and not as many as Chief Carter or I would like. We're trying to hire more, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we're maximizing the time that those officers actually have on the streets of Harrisburg fighting crime, and we can't do that if they are waiting around all day in a courtroom for a hearing on a misdemeanor, which really doesn't need to happen.
The numbers you gave, about 600 a year in misdemeanors?
Yeah, over.
Over that. Do you know if there's any racial disparity in who gets those misdemeanors?
I think there is a racial component and disparity issue with this and with our drug laws generally. We are looking to try and address it, but I would say most importantly, we're looking at it from the standpoint of not wanting to overly burden our youth with a long-term criminal record, which will then create a vicious cycle of them not being able to easily find employment and not being able to recover for what we would consider a mistake. A crime, but a crime akin to something worthy of a summary citation, not something worthy of a long-term criminal record.
Is there any provision to address the racial disparity in the fines, in the summary offenses going forward?
In terms of the fines, I will say...
Well, I think that goes to the local cops, right? In terms of who they pick on, essentially. So...
We deliberately chose a level for this fine which is less than Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We don't think $100 as a fine is an enormously difficult fine to pay, and there is also the possibility that if the youth cannot pay that fine, that they can be sentenced to community service in lieu of paying the fine. So a district justice may say, you'll get 10 hours of community service, and that will suffice for the $100 fine.
Okay, but it doesn't sound like there's any provision to address, racial profiling, racial disparity.
You mean to charge different people different fines? Or?
No, but if you're acknowledging that there's a disparity in the misdemeanors, it seems like there should be a plan to make sure.
We're addressing it because we are not classifying it as a misdemeanor and basically adding to the larger disparities within the criminal justice system and within our economic system. So we're preventatively addressing that by reclassifying this as a summary citation. You'll see less of our youth in the criminal justice system because they're able to address it as a summary citation and simply pay a fine and move on. Now, it can't be a repeated pattern. We're going to be reaching out to the families. If these are underage minors, then the family plays a role in this, and I think there's strong provisions in the bill about communication between the police department and the family.
Is there any provision?
Yep.
You contrasted with the Philly bill and how they had a more pro-decriminalization policy statement. Why isn't that included here? Why isn't that a priority?
Not something that I believe in or the chief believes in. I am strongly against all forms of drug use. Don't believe in smoking, even abstain personally from alcohol. I don't want to send that message that in any way we're condoning that type of behavior to our youth. We do, however, recognize the strains on the police department, the racial disparity in the criminal justice system, as well as the need to help prevent our youth from getting a long time mark on their record.
Okay, the mayor has another appointment, don't you?
I do. Let's finish it up. Last one. Okay.
Concept. Some people still believe it's a gateway to other drugs, and we know drugs are the key factor of crime in Harrisburg, or in all cities.
Right.
So your response to that?
My response is that if you make a mistake the first time, and you're a youth, we're going to give you an opportunity to reform. We're going to reach out to your family. We will help get you treatment if that's what you need. And we're not going to give you a mark on your record that will linger with you for the rest of your life. If, however, it's a continued and persistent problem, then it will revert back to a misdemeanor. That's the main difference between our law and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh's law. And we feel that that's the right balance, and that we're not sending a contradictory message. The message is don't do drugs. At the same time, we know that people make mistakes, and we are going to try and solve the problem in a way which I think recognizes that.
So just to be clear, so,
Yes.
hold on, just to be clear real quick. So it's a fining
Yep.
system, but you're also going to take it on a case-by-case basis to see if that person may need treatment as well?
There is a provision that requires us to reach out to the families of minors, and we will have the conversations with those families as to the best options. And I think treatment could be a good option and should be a good option. And that goes for more than just marijuana. I mean, the goal is to get drug offenders the help that they need so that they can deal with their addiction.
Given the
Okay, thank you,
socioeconomic
everyone.